Welcome to This Time in History, guys. This was supposed to be the Ward 2 debate, but unfortunately, only one candidate confirmed. He's with me tonight. We're going to do a little interview, a little questionnaire. We'll see what happens. Welcome, candidate for Ward 2, Thomas Yanuziello. I'm sorry, I always mess up the names. You can correct me. Go ahead.
My name is Thomas Yanuziello.
Okay.
I take no offense.
I apologize for butchering. I if you've listened to me before, I kind of unfortunately butcher the names, so I apologize. Um, so this is the part I usually do my interviews. I usually have a bit of a I guess a bit of a format that I follow. And one of the things I like to ask the candidates is the questions: why are you running? Why this election? And why now? And if you want to tie it into your parts of your platform, and then we'll go from there. Go ahead.
Right. Before the pandemic, I was running a delivery business, and my whole life got kind of thrown out of whack when everything shut down. Later, throughout the pandemic, got into long haul trucking, and eventually have landed on autonomous vehicles as my career path. And that brought me into Toronto. Working with autonomous vehicles, I do a lot of being hyper vigilant. It's kind of like being a driving instructor to a ghost that you can't see or talk to. I have to be always aware of every single possible hazard, even more so than a regular driver, because I don't know how the actual driver, the computer, is actually going to react in any given situation. Um, so it's giving me really an extra layer of appreciation for road safety, because I not only am aware of how bad the situation has become, but I know how bad it's going to get in the future. So one of the main reasons why I'm running is because I want to see that our roads be ready for driverless vehicles that are coming, and I don't want to see them plow through children on bicycles because of bad design. After the pandemic, I've really gotten into volunteering and engaging in local politics. As some of your listeners may know, I ran provincially in the Etobicoke Lakeshore.
Oh, I didn't know that. I didn't know that. I'm sorry.
No worries. Um, so in this election, well, let's go back to the previous election. I developed a relationship with Amber Overley, who is running in Lakeshore now, municipally. And I didn't want to run against her because we're both very progressive. So I waited to see which incumbents were going to run in the nearby wars, and was eventually compelled to run against Stephen Holiday, who was about to be acclaimed. So yeah, that's why I'm running in Ward 2. It's still part of Etobicoke. It's still very close to where I live. It's still very close to where I work. I drive through it every day in the work truck. And yeah, I have a stake in sport, and I want to see it protected.
That's amazing. I've lived in Etobicoke pretty much my whole life. There was that 1 year in Scarborough, but we're not going to talk about that. So I actually spent 13 years in Ward 3 as a resident. And I grew up in Ward 1, and we moved back to Ward 1. So I've been all over Etobicoke. And you're right. I love it. And I want to see it preserved. I'd love to hear about your platform, whatever that you can share with us. Go ahead.
Well, first and foremost, I will always be an environmentalist, so climate action is obviously my top priority. And while it's difficult to pin down any individual thing to focus on a platform piece in terms of climate action, I really just want to look at every single policy decision through the lens of climate. Well, I would say after climate, my next priority is housing. Obviously, everyone is aware that we have a housing affordability issue. Entire generations of people in the city can't afford to buy a home, and it's only going to continue getting worse until we get people elected who are willing to take on the problem. And thirdly, like I stated before, making our streets safer. And I've also modeled my entire platform off of adapting the global best practices that have been tried, tested, and proven in other cities around the world to Toronto, making them into our fabric, embracing our multiculturalism.
Okay. I like it. So I was wondering if this is a question I ask as well. If you've started any of your door knocking or your community engagement, and what kinds of things are you hearing at the door?
Beyond the three climate action, affordable housing, and safe streets, I'm also hearing a lot about people being unimpressed with the quality of services the city is providing, considering how much money they have access to, whether it's TTC service, our park washrooms being locked, none of the water fountains working, the number of homeless people on the streets every night. All of these issues that our current mayor and council are just ignoring.
Yeah, definitely. Okay, so let's talk about are there any ward specific issues that, if elected, you are looking to address?
Yes, definitely TTC fare integration because our ward is really a gateway to the West. So I know that a lot of our constituents are either like they're transferring systems between local and provincial, and there's a lack of cooperation there. So I'd like to try and form an intergovernmental forum with all three levels of government to increase cooperation in the design, development, and funding of our transit systems for buses, trains, subways, and everything. Making sure that the experience of traveling throughout Toronto, Ontario, and all of Canada can be more seamless and efficient.
Absolutely. That actually segues into one of the topics I wanted to talk about. So transit. You know, we've seen the TTC expand into York Region, and I'm wondering if you'd be in favor of expanding, whether it's LRT or subway or um, rapid bus routes into the west into Peel region and into the east into Durham region, and overall your opinion on the current state of the TTC and anything else you want to add on the topic.
I think that the current standard design practice for the TTC bus system is inefficient. We sort of just run all of our buses in straight lines across throughout the grid. In other countries, they have much more efficient systems that they call feeder and trunk design, where buses operate at high frequency, high volume across feeder lines between regions, and then trunk lines to distribute people throughout the region. It ends up looking more like a spider web. So I think that future developments need to follow that model as we sort of more address the needs of the users of the system as opposed to designing purely out of what can we do without the least spending. That's not addressing the needs that we need to get people from point A to point B in the volumes that they exist in. Yes, I would support expanding into other regions, especially cooperating with other municipalities and the provincial government to do so.
Absolutely. And in terms of the budget, there are important decisions that need to be made in the next term of council. The city's bleeding money. We have a $1.6 billion backlog in TCHC repairs. The TTC says they're going to be $500 million short in their funding, according to their own numbers. Meanwhile, their own CEO gets a 21% increase in his salary. For what? I have no idea. I'm just wondering, in terms of the budget, what can we do better? What needs to happen? And overall, what do you see budget wise for the city over the next term of council?
Well, the city is bleeding money, but it doesn't have to be. There's a lot of very inefficient spending going on. There's consultation positions that are basically just friends of somebody who works for the city who's accepting a six-figure income for doing basically nothing. There's like 5 soccer matches for the World Cup. That's not even final matches for some reason. We're giving them $300 million to host 8 soccer matches that nobody cares about. Not that nobody cares about soccer, but nobody cares about non-final matches. Let's be straight. So there's a lot of money that is being spent irresponsibly that needs to be repurposed. Another example is the resurfacing roads budget. Again, this is just putting another layer of asphalt over the road, not redesigning it in any way, not making it safer, just perpetuating the problem of gridlock and traffic. And it's one of the biggest items on the budget, literally accomplishing nothing other than fixing potholes. I'm not saying those potholes don't need to be fixed, but we need to do better.
Absolutely. And I just want to take a moment, welcome my new co-host. You guys know her from the debates, Ebony. You had to step away, but you've been listening, and anything you want to add on anything we've discussed so far?
Well, transit being made easier for everyone is obviously a huge many reasons. Like, I believe climate change is definitely, a thing. And if we want more people to be putting their cars away, we need to make transit more accessible for everybody. Not in terms of it being, not only in terms of it being more affordable, but like, honestly, just easier, right? It needs to be convenient. Otherwise, people are not going to want to put their cars away. So that's great. And I'm really happy to hear that that's passionate for you. Also, you see me waving. There's actually spiders. I let a spider come in my house yesterday, and I was like, I think she's pregnant. I believe she has had babies, because now they are dropping from the ceiling. So it's good luck. And I'm probably not trying to grab your attention, just casually relocating them. So don't mind.
Do you have any questions for Thomas on anything that we've discussed so far?
So far, pretty good. I'm just wondering, I don't want to like interject, but I love hearing people's opinions of like how to reduce crime.
Oh, we're gonna get to crime.
Okay.
We're gonna get to crime. That's coming up in a bit. But before we talk about crime, Thomas, I wanted to ask you about the unhoused situation and affordable housing. I think they go hand in hand. So for unhoused, I mean, I'll just speak briefly and then I'll let you talk. You watched as I watched in horror as the mayor ordered the police into the parks, not just Trinity Bellwoods, but Lamport as well. And I think there was another one, Alexandra, and displace all the unhoused people and rip down their tents and throw out their stuff and really just robbed them of the only thing that they had left, which was their dignity. And I'm just wondering, in your opinion, what needs to happen? What more can we do? Because I feel like enough is not being done by everyone. This is not just like more needs to be done, and I'm just wondering what you might think that that is. And then for the affordable housing part of it, you know, we see all these condos going up. The last 10 years, they're going up. There's more going up. Queensway and Etobicoke is getting ready to house some new condos. And I was under the understanding that every condo that goes up, there's supposed to be an affordable housing contingent, whether it's 5% or 10% or whatever it is. Apparently, there's a legal loophole that I don't know if people know about. So apparently, if the developer or whoever's selling the condo lists the 5 or 10% of the condos at market price or slightly below market price, that counts as affordable housing. And I was just wondering what your opinion is on that and what we can do to help more people get into lower income housing, and what we can do to help the unhoused. So now I'm going to throw it to you. And Ebony, once he's done, if you have anything to add, feel free to interject.
Right. Well, I just want to start by saying that those encampment rates that you mentioned were not reactionary. They were unfortunately very well thought out and planned by the people paid by our tax dollars. So that is quite infuriating. And the woman behind it was actually hired on as our city manager on an interim basis while we looked for another city manager. But still, she should not have been rewarded for that behavior. In terms of how to get our homeless population off of the streets, we need to look again at other cities around the world that have had success in this problem. Best example that I could find was Helsinki in Finland. That's their capital city. They have taken a housing first approach to end homelessness. So instead of what Toronto spends $129 million a year maintaining our homeless shelters, several of them across the city, Helsinki only has one single homeless shelter, and it's very low occupancy. Instead, they're spending all of their money buying property, renovating property, building property, and renting the property to the homeless, either for free or whatever they can afford to pay, giving them mental health support and social work support to get their lives together so that they can get out of the system and off the streets. That is the best solution that exists to help anyone experiencing homelessness. And I just want everyone listening to appreciate that this can happen to anyone. It has happened to several candidates running in this election as well. As in terms of affordable housing, I have been endorsed by and made pledges to housing organizations, including More Neighbors Toronto. More Neighbors Toronto even published a fully researched and functioning platform to solve the issue. So I would give my full support to that platform. It involves, first of all, legalizing housing development and across the entire city up to a certain limit, as well as along transit corridors, completely limitless, just like high rises, where the infrastructure is there to support it. Just legalize it. No more having to go back and forth with the city and consultations. Just get it done. There was prioritizing affordable housing at every opportunity.
Mm-hmm.
The minimum, I think it was actually supposed to be a target of 30% affordable. So we need to start prioritizing those units over the market units at this point. to get that number up, we need to close those loopholes too, that you mentioned. Condo developers should not be just lobbying the government really to get those rules written into, so that they can exploit the system. Taxing equitably and sustainably. That I'm hoping that we can work with the provincial government to establish a land value tax to maximize use of land as opposed to value of property. And that will help incentivize building more dense housing as well.
Mhm.
So it means more taxes. Or sorry, less. Sorry, do you have that in front of, I don't have it in front of me. But I think it's put it up pretty well.
Sorry, what is that?
There's Toronto.
Oh no, I saw the I saw the announcement and I didn't click on it, but I did see that you were endorsed by them, and congrats on that. So Ebony, did you have anything you wanted to add?
Just that, yeah, I don't think as many Canadians really realize, but I believe it's something like 65% of Canadians are financially insecure in the fact that they're only 1 to 2 paychecks away from being homeless, perhaps, or not being able to make those important payments that would jeopardize their housing or, you know, being able to eat. And that's really scary. I think, I have no idea who it is, but I heard there was a candidate who had been doing the ODSP diet. And I think that that's an experience anybody who hasn't should, kind of like working in the service industry. If you haven't had to make $20 stretch you an entire week in today's economy, you should try it, because a lot of people are just, oh, you know, they need to do more to help themselves, or I don't see how it's that bad when they get all this money, but like they have no idea what that feels like because they live comfortably. The fact that the middle class economy is pretty much disappearing now. It's just the haves and have nots, and the fine line between homelessness. It's all, we cannot afford it. It's just which one of us are still lucky enough to being able to make it work somehow. But like, it's like cogs in a wheel, you know, and you never know which pin's going to pop out next, but we're all playing with a house of card tower, you know, and it's really, really unfortunate that we're all living on the razor's edge down here. So I really appreciate that being part of your platform, and I really hope that, you know, we can affect change there, because it was not just the people on ODSP suffering. Like, we're literally all just borderline homeless poor.
I also wanted to mention that it's really a shame that More Neighbors Toronto had to come up with this platform. It really should have been a dedicated task force employed by the city who should be advising city council to make these decisions. And that's something that the city of Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania did back in 2015, I believe. So I want to bring that model to Toronto of having a dedicated task force whose sole responsibility is to make sure that housing stays affordable for the people who live and work here, and come up with the recommendations for council to make that happen.
Absolutely.
Yeah, right. I believe everybody should have access to affordable and safe. Sorry, Matt, go ahead.
No, I was just agreeing. Absolutely. Moving along, I want to talk about crime and the police. I'll just tell you a quick little story. If you've listened to my podcast, then you've already know the story. But like I told you at the top of the episode, you know, I lived in Etobicoke Lakeshore for 13 years. One of the reasons that we left Etobicoke Lakeshore, and when I say Etobicoke Lakeshore, I'm specifically, I'll call it out, Lakeshore and 10th Street. It's gotten really bad the last few years. Last 4 or 5 years that we lived there, it got really, really bad. You know, we had a neighbor that got shot in broad daylight walking to the store. There's drug dealing going on across the street at the basketball court that turns into drive-by shootings, which turns into all the neighborhood kids when there's a long weekend holiday, 1 or 2 of the nights during that weekend, they're buying fireworks and they're engaging in some sort of a war games style game where they're shooting fireworks at each other. They're shooting fireworks at innocent bystanders.
Those Roman candles.
Yeah, they're
I've almost-
shooting fireworks at TTC buses, even brazen enough to shoot them at police cars, and the police don't do anything. They speed off. And I'm just wondering, what more can we do to help curtail the crime? I'm interested in your opinion on the crime rate of Toronto, and I'm interested in your opinion on the job the Toronto police are doing. Go ahead.
Okay, well, first I'll talk about what the police are currently doing. I think that our police force is doing a lot of non-police work. We've all seen police officers that are just sitting in front of a construction project in their car or talking to the construction workers, distracting them from their jobs. Police officers, I don't know how many of your listeners are up at 1 a.m. You'll see two parked police cars in an empty parking lot with their driver's side window open, so they're just sitting there chatting, having a coffee, with their engines running. Not to mention, like, raiding the homeless encampments, harassing cyclists. So there's a lot of things. Oh, and speed enforcement. There's a lot of things that our police officers are currently doing that they don't need to be doing. I want to see that funding go towards crime prevention through upstream driving factors of crime. Our studies have shown that crime is driven by poverty. That's the number one factor. Drug and alcohol abuse, and basically boredom. So if we invest our money in affordable housing, drug and alcohol addiction programs, safe injection sites, and after school programs that keep children busy and off the streets,
Love that answer.
That will bring down our crime. Giving more money to the police budget to spend on bigger guns and more officers is sending them to war in an arms race against criminals. It's only going to exacerbate the problem and turn us into the United States. Studies have shown that when a criminal expects to meet armed resistance when they're about to commit a crime, they bring a bigger gun and they rack up a higher body count. That's effective more policing.
Absolutely. Anything you want to add, Ebony?
No, I mean, I was gonna prompt and see what this man thought about after school programs, and I'm glad to say, like, you're the first candidate that we've been talking about that has explicitly said after school programs. And I think that's, actually maybe Sarah mentioned that we needed more things to keep the youth busy, but after school program is what I'm thinking. I don't understand what kids are doing. Well, actually I do know what the kids are doing, but like how we've got it so that school lets out at like 2:40 for like high schoolers, and people don't get home from work until like 6:37. And some of them, some people have to travel so far that they're not getting home until 8. And if you're not paying for a babysitter, that is an awful lot of time to be spent unparented. So yeah, I think that, extracurriculars like band, track and field, those things do a lot to keep children not just in school longer, but also just actively healthy and more invested in their own health and future, and being more mindful of, demerit points or losing their license and what that might mean to them in the future. But I think that's amazing. Also, I would like to hear your opinion on like urban design. Like, do you have any ideas of what we might be able to do to shape and remodel neighborhoods to make them safer? I mean, there's a lot of dark alleys in Toronto. Do you think, maybe better lit areas might reduce the amount of sexual violence, maybe on campus and downtown?
Yes, I've actually looked into this. I believe the acronym was CISPID, something like that. It was about crime prevention through design. And it's all exactly what you're saying. making sure that there are no dark alleys where people will be scared to walk through because they're afraid they're going to get mugged. Just by providing lighting, you prevent crime. It's very simple, and these design standards exist. We just need to provide the funding and apply them. Another one that a lot of people don't think about is actually just trees. The crime rates and forestation in an area are correlated against each other very, very clearly. If you just plant more trees in a neighborhood, crime goes down.
Great. I think
All right.
CC would be good. We need more, not stoplight cameras, but we do need more cameras that are not owned by businesses and private, but more like owned by, so we can, keep track, I guess.
Absolutely. Moving along, I want to talk about public health. I'm interested to know your opinion on how the city handled the pandemic at the municipal level, of course, and what you think the city's learned from the pandemic, and then ultimately, in your opinion, are we ready for the next pandemic? Go ahead.
The city didn't do enough, and no, we're not ready. I think it's a horrible travesty that we haven't learned our lesson. All the scientists and doctors are in complete agreement on this. We just need better ventilation, and we need, it's not rocket science. They're just telling us, replace the ventilation systems, make the windows operable, get fresh air flowing. I don't understand why we are setting the dominoes back up again the exact same way they were before. They're just going to fall down again 6 years from now when the next pandemic comes around. It's mind-boggling to me to watch this happen, and it's going to be that much more painful if I have to watch this pandemic situation happen again because we didn't learn our lesson.
Ebony?
No, I mean, I fully believe that it took, I can't remember her first name, but Dr. Tam, too long, the whole government, to be able to decide exactly how many layers was efficient. I'm still not convinced that the cloth ones are going to do you much good, but I'm not here to get into the specific politics. But we needed to present a united front, and we needed to have been more thorough, I believe. I think Doug Ford had a bit of a loose hand with the amount of lockdowns. I feel like, personally, in my own opinion, they should have been longer, and less of them I think we could have done if we had done them more adequately in the first place. But I feel like he pandered to people's votes and the fact that people were going to get upset around holidays. But we needed to have dealt with it more efficiently. And I'm not convinced that if it happened again that we wouldn't just be stuck for another couple of years. I don't think we learned our lesson at all. So I'm wondering, what would you try and implement in terms of, more public health initiatives? What do you think that we could do to maybe bring this to light so that the next generation might handle this wiser?
I think we definitely need to establish protocols now and put them in place before a pandemic happens again. And I would like to see, like you said, a unified front in terms of messaging. Have the protocols in place for a unified message to be broadcast on our advertising spaces that are owned by the city, and our radios and TV all need to be saying the same things about what people should be doing, what they should be wearing in terms of masking and whatnot, about how best to keep themselves safe, and just make sure that it's consistent and follows what the scientists and the doctors are saying, not the politicians.
Agreed. I feel like there should have been more on science and rather than comfort. But what do you think about that, Matt?
We could have a 4-hour discussion about what I think, but I think that the system is not perfect. I think that more can be done, and that's why this next term of council is absolutely. I would say that not to take away from the last two terms, but this one is maybe more important than the last two. You know, we're depending on where you sit, we're at the tail end of the pandemic. Things are starting to come, I hate to use the word normal, but coming back to normal. But there's a lot of the leftover stuff that we're dealing with from the pandemic, financial and otherwise, and all that stuff's got to be dealt with, and it's got to be done correctly. The right decisions have to be made. That's why this election is so important, to get the right people in place to make those decisions. And so with that, Thomas, I mean, the listeners are listening. Why don't you tell them about your website and where they can contact you if they have any questions, comments, or suggestions? And then, you know, overall, I mean, this was, again, supposed to be a debate and nobody else showed up. So maybe tell the listeners why they should vote for you. Go ahead.
Well, you should vote for me because I am here reaching out to you right now. I'm the only one doing so. This is not an anomaly. All of the questionnaires I'm receiving from advocacy groups and newspapers and even canvassing, I am not seeing my opponents anywhere at all. Especially horrible from our current councillor, Stephen Holiday, who expects to just continue riding his coattails or his father's coattails for the third time. It would be horribly tragic if we allowed him to continue as councillor. I'm willing to actually say yes to progress for the city and for Ward 2, Etobicoke Center. The amount of times that Stephen Holiday has voted no on things that would have really helped us is just irritating beyond belief. He voted down Vision Zero budget, several affordable housing projects. Sorry, I don't have a list in front of me, but just he votes down everything that would help. Opening up our park washrooms as well. So if you want to find out more about me or my platform, my website is Yanuziello, TYANUZIELLO.wixsite.com/home. You can sign up to volunteer, donate money, read my platform. I'm also endorsed by several groups and have signed several pledges. You can find all those on my website as well.
And we'll include your website in the show notes, so people will be able to click instead of, you know, entering your name. And yeah, I mean, I've been to the Toronto election website every single day since registration. There isn't a day that I missed it. I want to thank you so much for coming on. And, you know, like I said, this was supposed to be a debate, but this was a great interview. I had fun. I know Ebony had fun. And just thank you so much for coming on and doing this interview. I really appreciate it. You know, election time for me is like Christmas. I don't know if you've heard me say this, but it really truly is. I love watching all the ward debates and mayoral debates. Unfortunately, you know, this time around I'm gonna have to do that remotely because I'll be in North Carolina during the election. So I'm actually going to take advantage of the advanced polls. Guys, remember that, this is to my listeners, remember that voting day is October 24th. Advanced polls open the 7th to the 14th. Get out and vote. I firmly believe that the only way to affect change is to be part of it. And thank you again, Thomas. And I really appreciate it. And I wish you nothing but luck on your campaign trail. And Ebony, do you have anything to add?
Oh, no, just saying that if you don't vote, you can't complain. I don't want to hear any bitching.
That too.
I'd like to add that you can find me on social media. My handle is Yanuziello. I'm very active on Twitter, Instagram, and TikTok. And Also, make sure that you don't just vote yourself, you bring everybody you know with you. Make it a group outing. Make a plan to go together and hold each other accountable.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I like that. I like that.
Oh.
And this interview will be up tonight. So I hope you guys all watch it and enjoy it. And I think that's a wrap here.
Thank you so much for hosting this.
Yeah, thanks for coming out. You had some really great points. Glad that you came.
They're doing more for democracy than our mainstream media.
Yeah, social media is the future. Honestly, it's funny. I was just talking to somebody about the fact that I haven't had cable for maybe like a decade and a half, but now you can stream cable channels that a cable box. Like we've come full circle. But most of us millennials don't have cable anymore. So if you're not, a part of social media, where are you? So what are you doing? This is the future, guys. So this podcast is where it's at.